When I bought the old Lakefront mansion, I knew I was taking on a project. What I didn't know was that I was also inheriting a decades-old argument with an HOA. The house sat on a beautiful piece of land overlooking a quiet lake. It had been abandoned for years. The paint was peeling. The windows were cracked. The porch was barely standing. And inside looked like nobody had lived there in decades. But I could see what it could become. So I bought it. The property records were clean. The deed was transferred into my name. The county records showed the property boundaries. And there was no active HOA lien listed against the property. I spent months restoring the mansion. I repaired the roof, rebuilt the porch, replaced broken windows, restored the old wooden floors. And slowly, the abandoned lake house started looking like a home again. Then, one afternoon, a letter arrived. It was from the local HOA. I assumed it was some kind of welcome notice. Instead, the first page contained a demand for money, a lot of money. They claimed I owed decades of unpaid HOA dues. And the starting year? 1971. I actually read the letter twice. The HOA was demanding dues dating back more than 50 years. I called their office. The woman on the phone told me the association believed the property had always been subject to their rules. I asked her a simple question. If that's true, why wasn't there an active lien when I purchased the property? She said the HOA had records showing the property was part of the original neighborhood development. I asked to see those records. She told me someone from the HOA would contact me. 2 days later, Karen showed up. She was the HOA president. She arrived carrying a large binder and wearing a confident expression. She stood on my restored porch and told me I needed to pay the outstanding balance. I asked her how much. She gave me a number that was almost as shocking as the original demand. She said the association had calculated unpaid dues, penalties, and accumulated charges going back to 1971. I looked at her. You're asking me to pay dues from before I was even born? Karen shrugged. The property owes the money. I asked her to show me the documents proving the obligation. She opened her binder. Inside were old HOA newsletters, meeting notes, photocopied pages, and several decades-old documents. But something was missing, a clear, recorded document connecting my specific property to the HOA obligation. I told Karen I wasn't going to pay anything until the claim was verified. She became angry. She said the HOA could place a lien on my property. I told her to send everything through the proper legal process. She left, but the following week, another letter arrived. This one was more aggressive. It said I was delinquent. It threatened additional penalties, and it warned that the HOA could take legal action. That's when I stopped treating the situation like a misunderstanding. I hired a property attorney. We started with the deed. Then we checked the title history. Then the subdivision records. Then every recorded HOA document we could find. The deeper we looked, the stranger the story became. There had been an HOA associated with the neighborhood decades ago, but the records showed changes over the years. Different names, different boundaries, different governing documents. And eventually, the original association had ceased operating. The current HOA was claiming it had inherited all of those old obligations, but my attorney wasn't convinced. He found something important in the title records. My property had changed ownership multiple times. Yet none of the previous transfers showed an outstanding HOA lien for those supposed unpaid dues. Not one. My attorney looked at me and said, if someone was owed 50 years of unpaid assessments, we need to know why the public records don't reflect that claim. That was the question we took back to the HOA. Karen called an emergency meeting. She arrived with her binder again. This time, I arrived with my attorney. Karen repeated her argument. The property has always been part of the association. My attorney asked her to provide the recorded declaration establishing the obligation. She handed him a photocopy. He studied it. Then he asked, "Where's the recording information for this document?" Karen didn't answer. He asked again. She said the original documents were in storage. My attorney calmly explained that an old photocopy wasn't enough to establish the current legal obligation she was demanding. Then he asked another question. If the property owed these assessments for decades, why is there no recorded lien from the previous owners? The room went quiet. Karen looked through her binder. She couldn't provide an answer. Then one board member spoke up. Wait, are we sure the old association and the current HOA are legally the same entity? That question changed everything. The HOA board postponed the meeting. Over the next several weeks, the association reviewed its records, and eventually, they sent me a new letter. The amount they had originally demanded was withdrawn. They acknowledged that they couldn't substantiate the decades-old balance against my property based on the records they had available. I still had to deal with the current HOA going forward, because there were valid rules and assessments that applied to the neighborhood. But the 50-year-old bill? Gone. No massive back payment. No mysterious 1971 debt. No decades of penalties. Just a claim that couldn't survive when the actual records were examined. And I learned something important during the restoration of that mansion. Old properties come with history. Sometimes that history is beautiful. Sometimes it's complicated. And sometimes someone finds an ancient document and decides it gives them the right to send you a bill for 50 years of money. But history isn't automatically a legal obligation. If someone claims you owe money because of your property, ask for the records. Ask where the obligation came from. Ask whether it was properly recorded. And most importantly, don't panic just because an official-looking letter arrives. Because the most intimidating claim can become very small once you put it next to the actual property records. Today, the mansion looks completely different. The porch is restored. The windows are new. The lake reflects off the back deck every morning. And that old abandoned house has become one of my favorite places in the world. The HOA still sends regular notices. But thankfully, they stopped sending me bills from 1971.